This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Rule of law tonight.
That's the topic, obviously, Bill. Corruption does exist in many parts of the world. What matters to China, I'm afraid, is how we're going to institutionalize the anti-graft campaign. President Xi Jinping knows clearly that he enjoys the strong mandate from the general public and the constituency in fighting corruption in both the civilian government as well as in the military. And that does appeal to the mind and heart of the Chinese people, and he enjoys tremendous popularity in carrying out this mandate, without which I'm afraid he will not be able to maintain integrity of the government.
Building legitimacy. Yeah.
Unlike the competitive democracy in the West, we pay an awful lot of attention to meritocracy. That's the foundation for what we call consultative democracy in China. Bill.
Okay. Let's check that everything's all set.
Yes. Since President Xi Jinping took office, rule of law is taking root in China. But the CPC Central Committee Politburo says China will not copy Western institutions. How can the integrity and authority of the judiciary be protected under the CPC leadership? What could be done to institutionalize the anti-graft campaign? Today, in our Liang Hui program of Voices and Votes, we are pleased to be joined in the studio by Professor He Jiahong with Renmin University of China.
Our China dream is to establish a socialist state with a rule of law. Regarding the work of the Supreme People's Court and the Supreme People's Procuratorate, I think we should try to find the Chinese way to guarantee judicial independence and to fight corruption effectively.
That is obviously very important, Professor He. And we are also joined by Mr. He Jing, partner and also executive member of the Anjie law firm.
Judicial reform and the rule of law are a very big job in China. We must do it right. This is a very big opportunity for China.
That's our topic. This is a dialogue. I'm Yang Rui. Gentlemen, let's start our conversation with the newly released work report by both the Supreme People's Court and the Supreme Procuratorate. How have these two reports impressed you?
I think they are good as usual, but nothing very new and nothing very exciting. This is my comment.
No excitement. That's basically a note of being cynical, I'm afraid. As a scholar, I may not be politically correct in commenting on what Professor He says about the two reports, but what do you think are the most impressive points that may have been presented by the heads of the two highest authorities?
I think the two things actually I was impressed. First of all, yes, the both branches did a very good job if you're looking at the statistics. And very interestingly, you can see that the coverage is very, very broad. When we look at the reports, you can pretty much see that, hey, the court and procuratorate did everything to forward the state policy, whether it is the anti-graft corruption, the campaign, or even the green development or the protection of women's rights. It's very comprehensive. It's very interesting. And one of the things I noticed from the Supreme Court report, you see that lots of the IT statistics there. The report, the Supreme Court actually made a highlight of the live streaming the trials, from the last July, Supreme Court starting nationwide, about, I think, over 600,000 cases were on the live stream. So that means that the people around the world can really look at it. This is a little bit different from the before. This obviously has something to add to this transparency.
Yang Rui, if you ask my interest about the reports, I would say I'm not very interested in what they have done in last year. I'm more interested in what they will do in this year and near future. For the report of the Supreme People's Court, I really wanted to see what we can make progress with the judicial reform. We have to find a way to promote the judicial independence in one way or the other. Of course, China cannot adopt the political system as in some Western countries, separation of powers, to have an independent judicial branch. But we have to find our own way to guarantee the judicial independence, because judicial independence is a basic principle for the rule of law, not the rule of man.
Well, recently, Mr. Wang Qishan, who has the Central Discipline Inspection Committee of the CPC, says a Central Supervision Committee is likely to be established to exercise oversight that covers almost all the departments of the judiciary system. It transcends all the legal organs of the judiciary system. Now, does it mean that the party's leadership is absolutely more important than judiciary itself? That will be controversial for Western observers. But Professor He Jiahong says over and over that we should navigate our own course independently, which means it's not exactly the same with the Western institutions, but to a large degree, independence of the judiciary must and has to be respected.
So I think when we talk about the independence, when we're talking about the political leadership of the CPC over the judiciary branches, there are the different levels. There are really, really different levels. At the very high level, if we really talk about the top design and how the CPC can really effectively lead the political, the judiciary branches, that's a very, very big issues. In terms of institutional design, I think our party, the CPC, is still exploring, like what the Wang Qishan has been stating. But right now, we have not seen how exactly going to be done. Okay, now political leadership over judicial branches have something been taken for granted in our part of the world. But how the judges, how we can really let judges do judges' job, that's probably more realistic issue at this moment. And as a practicing lawyer, one of the things we really want to see is we really want the judges have enough resources, have enough what we call safeguards, so they can get their job done, so they have enough judges to do the cases.
Excuse me, He Jing, let me look at the understatement that you imply in response to my question. What are the most likely interventions that may threaten to disrupt the independent judgment of the judges?
I think the most vulnerable thing for the judges, the independence, is that whether they can make their own decisions without listening to so-called boss. Okay, it's very interesting. One of the I heard from this actually very, very well-known professor in China. He has a lot of studies about the Western jurisprudence. He said the way we translate judge in Chinese, 法官, is a little bit misleading. Judges are not supposed to be bureaucrats. Okay, when you talk about the bureaucracy, there's always like the bureaucrats need to report to the boss. You have someone to listen to. But the judges around the world, you should listen to one thing only, not your boss. You listen to the law. So you can regard the judge case based on the law. So that's how the whole design about the judges. And that's really something that I think we should find a way to let the judges do the judge's job. That's what I mean. To let the judges really
Are you complaining about the rule of man? Because we are talking about the essence of rule of law, which means the single voice that should be viewed as the most arbitrary, the most important voice should be law itself, nothing more nor less. What do you think of the differences here, if any, in our country?
I think first is that judiciary should be under the leadership of the party. This is sure, because the judiciary, the judges, should make the judgment according to the law, and the law are all made under the leadership of the party. That's a legislation. This is one thing. And secondly, talking about the judicial independence, I agree with Dr. He that there are different levels. First is the independence of the court. In China, I think in past 2 or 3 years, the judicial reform is trying to enhance the independence of the courts from the local leadership, not at the central government. They would have a kind of their own independent source for personal appointment and also for the budget and the monetary support. So they would have more independent when they are making decisions about specific cases. And the next level is, he was talking about the independence of the judges. This is also the aim of the judicial reform in the last 2 years. You know, we would have a more effective accountability system for the judges. We would let the judges sitting in the bench to make the decision. And also we have some preventive measures to help them get rid of the interference from the local leaders. So this is a guarantee for judicial independence in our system.
We are discussing dynamics and challenges in the current crackdown campaign against corruption. Now, another important issue on the agenda for our discussion, I'm afraid, is the position of lawyers. Do you think lawyers are fully and duly respected at courts?
We have one
The
word.
understatement for my raising this question is why there's a sharp decline in the number of students who apply for criminal defense, a special area for the university education. Why do we face this embarrassing scenario?
I think the situation is very challenging. Okay, and traditionally speaking, probably the very best, the breed of the law student or even the lawyers take on there's a commercial law practice, which is arguably more, much more profitable. Okay, it's also something actually the law school are really good in training the students to be in. And the criminal defense is never, it's actually, the criminal defense is becoming more and more important. But somehow, whether the bar, I mean the lawyer profession have been prepared for that, or the court being prepared for that, that's a big challenge. The kind of, this practice is something that's very foreign, I would say very foreign to most of the lawyers, even including myself. Okay, I fortunately have done something in this area, but I never say that, okay, we're very comfortable like going to the criminal defense system and really make sure the rights of the defendant or suspect are fully protected. But however, I think the positive side is that in the last couple of years, that because of especially the companies, or let's say quote unquote the rich people, okay, they are now more in the conflicts of the system. They have a big rising need for really, really good criminal defense lawyer. So I'm actually, well, really, even for a law firm, that we are trying to build this kind of system to encourage more of our younger lawyers, or even encourage experienced lawyers to get into this area. This is definitely a new profession on the rise.
I would like just to make a footnote for this. You know, according to the statistics in China, the criminal defense rate by lawyer is just about 30% of all criminal cases. So it's quite low. As you mentioned, that not many graduates from the law school would like to take criminal defense as their career because they were told that the job would be very risky. And some of them may make good money, but some may not be. But
perhaps a devastating blow first came from Chongqing, where lawyer Li Zhuang was thrown behind the bars for his huge attempt to protect some of those who were allegedly found guilty by the bad guy, Wang Lijun, who was sentenced to years of imprisonment because of his misconduct as
it was a very
top
bad
official
case.
of the local public security bureau. Now, what does that case say about the security of this profession, the criminal defense?
I think when the case happened, I think it was 2010 that Li Zhuang was convicted. After that, to tell you the truth, that I conducted a trial, a mock trial on internet. I was self-designated as the judge on internet and invited netizens to participate the jury trial for Li Zhuang's case, because that many young lawyers would say that, see, the Li Zhuang is a very bad example. They say if you really want to do criminal defense, you cannot collect evidence. And if you collect evidence, you cannot collect testimonial evidence. If you cannot do that for yourself, cannot restrain yourself, probably you will go to the detention house. So this is a very bad thing, that defense lawyers should have the job protection. But as he mentioned, I think we have made some progresses with the amendment to criminal procedure law in 2012, and in last year, according to my knowledge, the Supreme People's Procuratorate and the Supreme People's Court had new opinions try to strengthen the protection of criminal defense lawyer. They would guarantee their rights in the job.
You know, part of the problem is that there's a perception that the lawyers, the interference, or lawyers' participation, or lawyers' the defense work may make the police job much harder and makes the job much harder to convict the bad guys. Okay, that's always a perception. That's not just in China.
Yeah, and
okay?
also more important is that the prosecutor would think the same way. They said a good defense lawyer will make their job more difficult. So we know that, you know, especially in some cities, you know, far west, the prosecutor would not like to face a lawyer from Beijing because they thought it would make their job very difficult.
You know, gentlemen, this is indeed a long-term problem, a chronic issue with regard to litigation costs. It's more expensive for the law enforcement personnel. However, we have to take rule of law very seriously. It means a long, painful learning curve for this country, for which rule of law was something novel. When we come back, we'll take a closer look and a second look at the tragic case of Nie Shubin, who was wrongly convicted and executed years ago. Stay with us. Hi, I'm among 800 million users of WeChat and have been on this most crazy social media networking every day. Dynamic interactions here in the friend circle are actually based on trust, privacy, and the readiness to share one's thoughts, feelings, and fun. The pull and the push of the Lianghui agenda invites discussions on very sharp social and world issues. Please join me in pursuing this very intellectual pleasure. Welcome back. Last year, 2016, witnessed the most sensational headline-making story of Nie Shubin. In December, Nie Shubin, a villager in Hebei province who was executed in 1995, was exonerated by the top court due to a lack of evidence for his conviction of a murder and a rape. Now, this caused a lot of debates on the social media as to why such a tragic mistake was made by the local judicial authorities. What lessons can we learn, Professor He?
You know that I led a group of people to conduct research on wrongful convictions in China for 10 years. Of course, the Shubin's case is one of the typical cases for wrongful conviction in China. Many people, when they heard the wrongful conviction, they would always complain, and the police officer, the prosecutor, the judges, they may call their names and say they were all evils. But according to our study, I don't think that all those police officers, prosecutors, or judges were evil guys. And at least some of them were quite good persons. So we have seen the loopholes in our criminal justice system, not the individual evil to cause the wrongful convictions. I think there are many. I call it 10 misleading zones in our criminal justice system, including the pressure for police department to solve a criminal case within certain time limit, and also the way to handle the case from a confession to evidence, and also to reduce the punishment if there was a doubt, improve the case. So for Shubin's case, it also illustrates the big problem to redress the miscarriage of justice, because it lasted for more than 20 years.
Right.
So many people will say, we are not very concerned about the cause of wrongful conviction. Now we are concerned about why so many years, even with the so-called the true perpetrator was discovered in 2005. And
Perhaps
no
we have tons
actions.
of reasons to respect and to say gratitude to the lawyer, the die-hard lawyer, 史克律师,
Right.
who defended the case of Nie Shubin. Without the support of the media and without the strong, consistent support of the die-hard lawyer or 史克律师, 维权律师, I mean, this wrongful conviction would not have been rectified.
Absolutely. I think this really demonstrates the persistence is really valuable. Okay, without the persistence of the judges, the jurors, and the professors, and the lawyers, and the social, the press concern, the justice may really come even later. I think the significance of this case is really restore some kind of a trust of the system. I think our China needs to be more open about this. Yes, the wrongful conviction is painful. It's really painful. But people need to understand, the system is never perfect. It's a big job. So there are mistakes. Then, when this kind of cases more revealed, more restored, I think we are starting to be more, maybe have a calmness to deal with the kind of cases. When the system makes some big mistakes, let's correct it. Let's pay for it.
And also, I think that we should see the positive energy of those wrongful conviction cases, because it push forward the reform of a criminal justice system. You know that with the wrongful convictions of Zhao Zuohai, 2010, we had 2 new decisions about criminal evidence.
The Supreme People's Court agrees to review the death penalty. Is that the remarkable progress that has been achieved?
And also in Nie Shubin's case, a good thing is that push forward about the reform of, we call it trial supervisory procedure. For many years, the review of possible wrongful conviction was done by the same province authorities. And it's very difficult to do that. In Nie Shubin's case, the Supreme People's Court decided in 2014 to have the case reviewed by the High Court of Shandong Province, not Hebei Province. I think that's a progress.
I think we really must give a lot of credit to this Supreme Court. They have done a lot.
Right.
They're really trying very hard. In lots of criminal cases, in all the other areas as well, we're dealing with a lot of IP cases. Now Supreme Court is much more active in taking another look at the cases made by the lower court. Recently, the Michael Jordan case was really sort of reversed by the Supreme Court. That actually sends a very, very strong signal.
And I believe progress relies on more active international exchanges as well as legal education in universities. That's the job you are doing.
Yeah.
But can you elaborate further why we have had more or far more conviction rates and yet such low acquittal rate? I mean, in other countries where the legal system is far more developed, I believe the conviction rate would be far more. I mean, instead of being so low.
You're right.
What can you tell us?
Yeah, you're right that according to the statistics for many years, the conviction rate in China is, I would say, ridiculous high. That's more than 99% of criminal cases would have the conviction. In other words, the acquittal rate would be 0.103. That, in common law countries, generally speaking, like in the United States, the conviction rate may be as high as 20%. And in continental legal system, France, Germany, the conviction rate, the acquittal rate would be 20% in common law countries.
That's
and
a
probably
big shock.
5%.
That's alarming.
Yeah.
Indeed. It's
But in
shocking.
China, it's institutional. There are many factors affecting that. Of course, in China, we emphasize the cooperation between the police department, the prosecutor's office, and the courts. And, in the tradition, our criminal proceeding system was a kind of investigation-centeredness. So if the police department says this is a guy, and then the prosecutor would institute the prosecution, and the judge would convict him. There should be a check among the three, and now I'm very happy to see that the fourth plenum of the ruling party, 2014, said China should move towards a trial-centeredness, and this is a good thing. And in the work report of Supreme People's Court, Mr. Zhou Qiang mentioned that in last year, I think there are hundreds of cases they gave a not guilty verdict. I think this is a progress.
Right.
The note of irony, I'm afraid, gentlemen, the note of irony is that despite the alarming low acquittal rate, last year we had a devastating earthquake, and the epicenter was in Beijing. The release of the policemen who were involved in the scandal of Lei Yang shocked 99% of the netizens. They could not understand why the policemen involved in the case were released. They were acquitted. In sharp contrast, ironically, with 7 policemen in Hong Kong who were sentenced to 2 years imprisonment for abusing the rights of a protester who was involved in the Occupy Central movement in Hong Kong. I mean, we were all shocked into silence.
That probably more shows the dilemma we're having these days, actually the transparency. I think transparency at the core of the rule of law, and that's something we really have to keep building on, okay? The kind of cases like you mentioned, Lei Yang, I think probably really send a much serious signal about the kind of mistrust between the public, between the press, and between the law enforcement authorities. Mm-hmm. You don't want a society where the police are deeply mistrusted. That's not a good thing, okay? So we have to do much more in terms of the legal reform, judicial reforms.
Last year, the good news was the Ministry of Public Security asked the law enforcement personnel to feel more comfortable with their enforcement of the law under the supervision of the cameras. I mean, this regulations, of course, made policemen feel a lot uncomfortable. They were put on unease. However, do you think this helps? This is going to work?
I think that transparency is a key word for promoting rule of law and for promoting the judicial justice. That's right. Even, for Lei Yang's case, we would like to see more transparent proceeding of the investigation of the case. But now, I cannot make a comment because I don't really know the facts in the case.
So definitely technology will help.
Yeah.
Technology will help. And a growing public awareness about the transparency itself will be a wake-up call. A Lei Yang case, I believe, I think you will share the faith that it's a wake-up call for the judicial reform in this country.
Yeah, I agree with that. And also, according to the report of Mr. Zhou Qiang, in last year and the year before, the transparency of judiciary has been upgraded. You know that more than 40,000 cases were all broadcast either on internet or the other way to have other people to see the trial.
Yes, indeed, the use of social media will definitely fuel public scrutiny about all the cases, and particularly legal reform in this country. With that, we come to the end of this edition of Dialogue, Voices and Votes. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.
This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
I'm Dongxu, live in Beijing. Welcome to the World Today.